Okay, so we'll move on to Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance, APFO, the chart for report and action. Ms. Kamen.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Moderano, Ms. Turner-Little. My name is Renee Kamen, School Planning Manager. I'm here with Mr. Washington and Mr. Dan Luley. Today, our office is here to present the 2020 school capacity charts and supplemental data, which is part of the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance. Ms. Hanks, do you have my presentation put up on the screen? Awesome, thank you. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, thanks. The APFO charts are utilized as part of the growth management process of Howard County for new residential developments. The board and Howard County Public School System is required to update the school capacity charts annually. The annual report identifies the capacity utilization for each school, that is every elementary, middle, and high, as well as elementary school regions that are constrained to new future residential development if capacity utilization developed for the FY 2021 capital budget and capital improvement program and redistricting process exceeds 105% for the elementary school, 105% for elementary school regions, 110% for the middle schools, or 115% for the high schools. These calculations are based on capacities listed in the most recent board requested capital improvement program. Individual schools or elementary regions show capacity utilization less than percentage are noted and are considered open to new residential development. Additionally, the APFO requires submission of several supplemental items that will be discussed further in this presentation. Can you go to the next slide, please? Before I begin, I would like to take a quick refresher on how to read the APFO charts. These should be an attachment 2 of your report. In this example here, constrained schools are in the chart are C, and if it's open, it's a blank school. Constrained schools and regions are also shown in red. An elementary school could be constrained to new residential development if the region is close. For example, you can see Columbia West is considered constrained, so that means Longfellow and Swansfield would also be close to new residential development. Can I have the next slide, please? Above you is the 2020 elementary school capacities chart. This is the first page of attachment 2. The test year for this chart and all subsequent charts is 2023-2024 and reflects capacity utilization rates with the Board of Education requested FY 2021 capital budget projects, the spring 2019 projections that are adjusted for the board approved school year 2020-2021 boundaries, and the board requested FY 2021 capacities. For the 2020 APFO school capacity charts, there are 20 elementary schools that are constrained. The northern, Columbia West, and Southeast regions are also constrained to new construction for the test year. With these closed regions, 7 additional elementary schools will be constrained to new residential construction. Next slide, please. Before you is the 2020 middle school chart, which shows that 6 middle schools will be constrained for the test year, and they are Dunlaga Middle School, Hammond Middle School, Mount View Middle School, Patapsco Middle School, and Thomas Viaduct Middle School. Can I have the next slide? Here's the 2020 high school capacity chart. This chart was newly required under 2018 amendments to the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance. And for school year 2023, 5 high schools are constrained to new development. Those high schools include Centennial High School, Howard High School, Long Reach High School, Marriotts Ridge High School, and Reservoir High School. Next slide, please. In addition to the school capacity chart, the ordinance also requires submission of several pieces of information, which include the following: state and local capacities, the date of the last redistricting for each school, a chart showing what portions of the projected enrollment increases are due to the several housing factors that we calculate, the capital budget pages showing current and future funding assumptions if the school is shown in the open test. And each of these items are in your board report as attachment 3. The last page from attachment 3 is intended to be notice to County Council of the schools that have reached 95% capacity utilization and are projected to exceed 110% capacity utilization within the next 5 years. The attachment also includes potential solutions as required by the ordinance. Should you approve the motion as indicated in the report, council then would be prompted to hold a joint special meeting. Next slide. The next steps for this chart is to the board approve the capacity school chart for submission to Howard County Council for council's adoption, along with the supplemental information provided in the ordinance. This chart will then be pre-filed to the county on May 21st and the legislation introduced on June 1st. A public hearing is scheduled on June 2015 with a council vote on July 6th. And any amendments to our chart would be due July 2nd if something were to change with the adoption of the FY20 capital budget. And at this time, I will take any questions.
Okay, Ms. Hanks, if you can close the file. Okay, I see Ms. Caternio.
Is there I noticed on the high school chart, it's not broken into region. Is that for a reason, or are we moving away from the regions because they're still in place for the elementary and the middle? I'm just wondering if there's a reason for that.
Sure. There actually is no region test requirement at the middle school and high school.
Okay.
So we felt it better just to organize for the entire, just alphabetically.
Okay. I actually would prefer that. I just want to make sure that everyone knows, ring the alarm, the situation that we are in with this, because we do not have the capacity coming to support the enrollment. Even with high school 13 and Hammond addition, we will be short projection wise 300 seats when those come online in the high school. And by 2026, we'll be short over 2,000 seats and 1,400 seats at the middle school level. So I know you don't have an answer for me. This is not in any way, shape, or form blaming our Office of School Planning here. I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of what is coming. And especially given the new reality of likely needing to space more and, have fewer kids in the schools, fewer kids in the classrooms. This is going to be very difficult to navigate. I also wanted to point out, the point of the APFO and the open is to try to control development until we have capacity. And that hasn't been what is happening. I looked through the years, Dunlogan has been constrained since 2010. And the answer is always, in the CIP, but then that project gets deferred in the CIP. So we don't really have real solutions. So I know there's not going to be an answer to me here. I just want to share this and hopefully, our friends at the county level will look at this chart and see the reality that's coming, or it's already here. Because I don't think the point of APFO was to have a school languish on the constraint chart for 10 years. And that's just one example. I will defer time to my colleagues.
Okay, so Ms. Caternio, I think you raised some really good points, and I would ask if Ms. Kamen could provide that data for our county council in terms of the number of seats we will need that, we won't have.
It's in the chart. It's in the chart.
I know we have it by school.
It's hard to read. It's tiny print. So,
but it's by school, and I like the overall part too.
Yeah,
it's on the bottom.
Okay, Miss Mallow.
Ms. Kamen, you mentioned the potential for the effect of the capital budget and what we receive from the county council. So I know the county executive has already made his recommendations and the county council will be voting on this. What is our timeline between what we hear from the county council and when we need to approve the actual budget and then any potential changes to the open close chart because of this? And has the second part of this is, has the Office of School Planning done any preliminary discussions or research regarding the potential for the impact of the pandemic with regards to capital construction and what we think we may or may not be able to move forward with as it affects seats and the open close chart?
Ms. Kamen.
Sure. I want to say that the high school capacity chart was very difficult to do this year. In past years, we generally include open CIP seats. So what's not reflected in this chart that goes back to Ms. Petronio's initial question is the fact that typically when we open schools, we have a really rough idea as to what schools would be affected with the new seats. So the high school has the potential of affecting the chart in two very different ways. So we chose not to show the impact of opening the new high school 13. In terms of the current budget, if Hammond, I'm going to say if Hammond High School were to be this project that would move out in further years instead of opening at its current timetable, open out further. When the board makes its decision for the budget, which I believe is early June, we would still have time to prepare new charts to reflect any of those capital project decisions. This happened, I want to say about 2 years ago with Talbot Springs. There was some question as to what year Talbot Springs would be opened up. And so by the time we produced the produced the APFO charts, we ended up preparing again based on the actual budget from that same year when Talbot was progressed a year behind. So instead of Talbot's showing opened, it was closed. So something very similar could happen here if either Talbot or Hammond were postponed longer in the chart. We would make that adjustment to show either the seats being there or not, and then the results of that being shown as Hammond or Talbot being open or closed in that same 10-year time frame. And then to your third point about COVID, my office staff has started having conversations with other local agencies, local education departments, and we're all actually having conversations about how COVID could be reflected in our projections. And we want to reach out to the different sources of information, our realtors, the Maryland business industry, to see how it could be reflected in future projections that our office has made. So far, we haven't seen any indication, and this goes along with many of our fellow planners in Montgomery, Prince George's, and even in Alexandria and Fairfax, that it's actually, at least in terms of new construction, slowing down. It's still chugging along for all of its intents and purposes. So the actual effect of COVID is yet to be seen in at least our projections, but our office actually is actively trying to talk with our colleagues in other areas, as well as realtors and our MBIA association, to see if they're seeing any declines as well in sales or in building.
Okay, you good, Ms. Mallow?
Yes, I think some of the other questions are not directly related to the open close chart, but more a larger conversation that we should be having with operations and Mr. Lubley's department about what the economic impact of COVID is and how we should be taking that into account with regards to planning for our CIP and what we approve in probably about a month.
Okay, Dr. Wu?
Mr. Carmen, I have a question on the report on page 5. So I'm comparing the capacity between local and the state. And I realized, for example, for elementary school level, majority of our local capacity is a little smaller than the state. One example, for example, Waverly, our state local capacity is 788 and our state is 948. And then when I compared high school, for example, Glen Elk, our local is 1,420 and our state is 945. What's the reason? Like it seems like in elementary school level, our local capacity is a little lower than the state capacity, but for high school, our local capacity is a little bigger than the state capacity in general.
I could try to address that, Dr. Wu. This is Dan Luley, Acting Director, Capital Planning and Construction. Thank you for bringing that question up. I know it is a question that you have asked before. Our interagency specialist, Ms. Betsy Zintz in our office, has been working with the state agency. We are currently requesting a review of the state rated capacities for a lot of our facilities. They are starting with the high school level. It does take some time. Typically, we do note that our local capacity is generally less than the state rated capacity, and that is due to several factors. The state, for one, will count a room that is 550 square feet, whereas we deem a teaching space to be 660 or greater. And they also count spaces that we typically do not at a local level. One of the reasons that the difference can be identified for Glen Elk, for instance, is as we go through renovations and modernizations, the state rated capacities are not necessarily updated. So that again gets us back into, we are working with the state legislation, or not legislation, but the state agencies to try and have those state rated capacities updated for all of our schools.
So the reason I'm asking this question, because it both impacts the closed chart, APFO closed chart, right? And then maybe the funding formula, the state will fund in our school system. Is that right? If the capacity changes.
I'll allow Ms. Kamen to address the APFO chart. As far as the funding, both the local and the state rated capacities do come into question, but specifically when we do look at doing a project at that school or in a school within that specific region. So for instance, when we're looking to do Hammond, they're not necessarily looking at the Glen Elk High School because that is in another region, but they would look at Hammond, Reservoir, and spaces like that that are in that area. As far, again, as the Apfo, I'd like Ms. Kamen if she could weigh in on that.
Sure. So if we were to, so the board, previous boards made a decision probably between 2000 and 2015 to do their capacities a certain way, which did not include certain spaces that the state would do. Also, the way the board defines in its policy, which capacity it's going to be, we would calculate to do any of our utilization. For consistency purposes, it's been local capacity. I've traced it back to 2008, and I think it has gone longer than that, but APFO only started in '92. So that's why when we calculate our utilization, everything is based off of local. Our policy guides us that direction. Past board decisions based on capacities have been that, and they all align with each other all the way through to our adequate public facilities our feasibility study when we're recommending our capacity type projects.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so we'll move on to Ms. Caternio.
Ms. Kamen, on the allocation chart on the DPZ website, they have the wrong, many of the schools are wrong for what, what polygon the allocation goes to. This is just sort of a house. I'm just wondering if you could have a conversation with them because it hasn't been updated since the redistricting before the last redistricting. So, I mean, they told me it takes a while to catch up with redistricting, but it's been a couple of years now. And I don't know if that'll impact things.
Yeah. We actually, I'm sorry. We actually, after we do our, we get requests to do the school determinations. I'll work with Mr. Bronow in DPZ to fix or correct that chart on the housing unit.
That would be great. I had another question and it has escaped me.
Okay, I'll go on to Ms. Delmont Small.
Great, thank you. So if I want to make sure I heard you correctly, that the calculation and the data shown on the Apfo charts includes our 10-year CIP, correct? Ms. Kamen?
Yes, yes, that's correct. Sorry, my mouse was not cooperating. Yes.
Okay, and that in this particular chart, when it came to the capacity of high school 13, you chose to not show the impact of the high school of capacity coming in from high school 13, correct?
Yes, in terms of which schools could be open based off of a foreseeable redistricting plan.
Okay, so I'm wondering, for those of us both on the board and in the community who consider these charts very important, and we go back and we compare year to year to year, are we going to make it difficult by doing that? Are we making it difficult to do a year to year apples to apples comparison?
What do you mean? Can I clarify year to year apples to apples? So there are 8 different boundaries that were discussed in the 2019 process. We would have to apply all of the resulting tables to the APFO chart, and that would be how you would get your comparison if that's what you're looking for.
Well, because and correct me if I'm wrong, in last year's chart, you included the capacity for 13, correct?
It's included in the countywide totals. It's not included in terms of would, say, Howard High School be opened with a CIP project, which would theoretically then open it to any Howard High School in particular, to any new development. And because there's such a wide variety in how the boundaries could be drawn, we chose to be very conservative and not go with an open CIP type of function on these charts, because it could theoretically open a school up earlier than it really should be based on the future boundary.
Okay, and has that been our practice in the past, or is that something we're just doing at this point in time?
So the practice in the past has been doing open CIP. Most of our OCIP projects have been related at the elementary school level. This is the first time, I believe, that OICP has not been applied at the high school level. I would have to check to go back in time to see what happened when Marriott's Ridge came online, but I don't recall. I would have to double check to see if OCIP existed in the APFO charts for Marriott's Ridge High School. That would be the only comparison that I have.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you very much. So it's safe to say that we are at the point of not being able to redistrict ourselves out of our capacity issues, correct? Looking at the numbers here and looking at what's constrained, or as I used to say, closed, correct?
So this chart is it'll catch up with itself about school year 2023 when I show this chart, because then the boundaries for high school 13 will be settled. So really this chart is being the most conservative with the number of seats available to new development. So instead of prematurely opening a high school, like I said, but if you look at the overall, the countywide totals, the capacity for the high school 13 is being included. So the school is showing relief countywide to the overall seat need for the county. It's just not directly reflecting to the school that it will affect.
Okay. I understand the distinction. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, to put it simply, we need more schools.
We do need seats. We do need seats in specific areas. It's hard to really tell if it's a new school for the high school at this time, or if it's going to be specific to a certain region, say like Centennial or Oakland Mills, based on the decisions that have yet to be made.
Well, I'm just looking at what the projections are, and it doesn't look as though our seats are going to be there.
We will need seats.
We will need seats, which ironically exist in schools.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I believe, this is Dan Liebley again, I believe the clear distinction is the difference between new school versus seats. As Ms. Kamen is noting, and as you are noting, Ms. Delma Small, we will need seats, and our growth in our capacity now, the growth is outweighing our capacity. That seats that we need are not necessarily a brand new school, as it may be renovations and additions to schools in individual regions. But you are correct that yes, we will need seats.
Yeah, I mean, if we have the ability to add an addition or do a renovation, and it is from a fiscal sense a good decision, and if it makes sense with keeping, you know, with all of those different factors that go into it, obviously we want to do that. And I appreciate that when we're looking at building new schools, we're doing so with an eye towards when, if and when we do have to do an addition, that we're making sure that the footprint will allow us to do that when we need to. And as far as timing of this, is there any requirement that it must be acted on this afternoon, evening?
Yes, pre-file legislation occurs on the 21st. But again, that doesn't preclude the board, if there are changes in the capital budget, to make an amendment to its APFO school capacity chart.
So you said that this has, so when do?
So pre-files due May 21st at the county council. It goes with the housing allocations as well. But amendments to this chart can occur up until July 2nd if needed.
Okay, and last, I remember at some point I don't think we voted on it on time. Am I remembering incorrectly?
Actually, no, I think what you're referring to is the time that I had to bring the amendment back because of Talbot Springs.
Okay, that might be what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think almost everybody has spoken on this. I know I still see some hands, but I'm going to make a motion to approve the Apfo chart. Ms. Coombs?
I second.
Okay, I'm going to ask everybody to put your hands down unless you want to discuss. Ms. Mallow, did you want to discuss?
Sorry, I didn't see that my hand was still up. It should not be.
Okay, Ms. Hanks, we're ready to vote.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Ellis, excuse me, and a second by Ms. Coombs to approve the school capacity charts and attach supplemental data for submittal to the Howard County Council. Ms. Coombs,
Yes.
Ms. Petronio,
Yes.
Ms. Delman Small,
Yes.
Ms. Ellis,
Yes.
Ms. Mallow,
Yes.
Ms. Taj,
Yes.
Dr. Wu,
Yes.
Ms. Alston.
Yes.
Motion passes 8-0.
Okay, so we're about an hour off, but we're going to try to go through the categorical budget transfer as quickly as possible so that we can take a break